Hello YouTube! How the hell are you? It's Iconic Bilo bringing you Shrouded Secrecy, a brand new series where I dive into the history that is quickly covered up by the government to show you the truth, nothing but the truth, and everything in between. First, a warning. Although many people have heard some of these stories, I will expand and challenge you to expand the way you think as well. And make sure to write down everything that you want to know and Google it when you get home if you don't feel like I covered it the best I possibly could. This video may contain graphic content or language, so if you're sensitive to that, make sure that you are warned, and if you don't want to listen to it, click off. This first video is about the JFK assassination and the conspiracies behind it. First, we will dive into the original story that was released by the press and the government, and then we will switch gears into theories that may or may not be true, and then at the end I will tell you exactly what I personally believe and what also may be included in that. Okay, so let's start out with the original story. The news said that 35th President John F. Kennedy was shot at 12:30 on Friday, November 22nd, 1963 in Dealey Plaza, and was shot by a sniper. This is completely true. Nobody can question the times because that's exactly when it happened. Kennedy was shot and killed, and the governor of Texas, John Connally, was also injured as well. 3 shots were fired that day, and as the government wants you to believe, 3 shots were fired by one person, Lee Harvey Oswald, who supposedly acted alone and shot every shot in the plaza in about 5 or 6 seconds. Oswald was later killed by Jack Ruby, a mafia nightclub owner, within days of his trial. These are all facts that most people don't mess with. Now let's look deeper. The original report says 3 shots were fired and 2 connected with the limo's passengers. The first bullet was called the miracle bullet, which hit JFK in the base of the neck and came out the front of him, hit him in the knee, reflected again, hit the governor's ribs, and came out his hand and into his thigh. Crazy? Yeah, I think so too. That didn't fucking happen. And then was shot in the back of the head, which was the shot that killed him. They sped off out of the city, under the underpass, towards the hospital. Later, both the governor and JFK were in surgery. JFK was pronounced dead. And then later, it came out that everybody said that Lee Harvey Oswald was the only person doing this, and then they started looking into his backstory. Oswald ended up coming from Russia at one point after he left the United States, and to go live there for a few years. He brought a woman back, and this was all during the Cold War, where Russia and the United States didn't really get along at all. We were in a nuclear arms race in between each other, and that wasn't the greatest idea to even do, and then go to shoot our president. You're not gonna accomplish very much there. Later that day, by 2:40, Lyndon Johnson, the vice president at the time, had become our new president with a huge smile on his face. If you look at pictures online or pictures in textbooks and stuff like that, he has a huge smile on his face as he's taking the oath of office. Personally, I find this very sketchy. It's up to you. The Warren Commission was started by JFK, was a commission that was started to find out what exactly happened and why exactly it happened, and interview all the witnesses. It was supposed to show what happened, but it eventually could have been a complete cover-up by not only Lyndon Johnson, but the CIA and the FBI as well. Maybe the Secret Service. I guess we'll find out later on in the video. And has never been recovered or released to the public. Now let's look into another conspiracy theory. When the FBI and the CIA had very high officials, including George H.W. Bush, there on November 22nd. This doesn't look as bad as what it would, but let's dive a little deeper into this. Bush's father said during the 60s he had no idea where his son was and that he may be on an old oil rig that they had in the Gulf of Mexico. Obviously, when both of them were part of the CIA and everything else, they can't really say. So this obviously was a cover-up of some kind. Don't you think that a father of an 18 to 20-year-old man would know where his son is? Trust me, I would. And meanwhile, when he was in Texas, he had two terrorists from the Iran-Contra problems that the United States had during the first war in Afghanistan that we were facing, the Russians and the Iraqis, I believe. No, Iranians. He had two main terrorists from that were in Dealey Plaza that day. He was standing right under the school book depository where Oswald was shooting. This is crazy. Like, why didn't people talk about this or see this? This is something insane that most people wouldn't even talk about. And this could only prove that maybe Oswald was hired by the CIA or the internal services. But this doesn't mean that this is the only answer. Now let's dive into what I actually believe in. First, maybe there was a second shooter, and maybe he was part of the government. But a month or so before all of this craziness happened, JFK talked about a secret society or a secret government that ran the United States. And a month later, almost to the day, he was shot. What did he say in this speech that gave him away or put him into the spotlight of being assassinated? I'm going to either talk about or play a quick little clip that I wanted you guys to hear of this specific speech that he gave. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we as a people inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths and secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent effects far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is a little value in ensuring the survival of our nation, of our traditions do not survive without it. And there is a very grave danger that is announced for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment, that I do not intend to permit to extend that is in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here today as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or withhold from the press and the public the facts that they deserve to know. Here he was trying to teach everybody about the secret societies such as the Illuminati, the Freemasons, and why they try and control the government, or what they try and do with our country and our infrastructure, and how devastating they have been to our economy, and how ridiculous some of the things they do is. They've killed people. They've silenced people that have looked down at them in the wrong way. This is how he felt, and we all needed to know what he felt. In a way, it was him telling us he knows he's going to get shot for this, or he knows he's going to get killed for this. But you guys need to look into this and make sure that I'm not dying in vain because of the secret society that wants me out, because I'm not like everybody else. Then, let's skip a month later. When they arrived in Dallas, the Vice President, Lyndon Johnson, removed the Secret Service from the back of the president's car. There is a clip online that you can watch on YouTube where you see the Secret Service members running behind JFK's car. Meanwhile, it's speeding off. And you see them just stop utterly running towards the car. And then you see the Secret Service car and a few other cars go. It's like that they didn't even try. They just stopped. They were told not to go any harder. And maybe if they were on the back of the car, JFK or John Connally wouldn't have been shot at all. Like, you gotta think where the Secret Service stood on the back of the car would have blocked not only JFK, but probably about half of John Connally. So maybe would have been 4 or 5 shots to shoot the president? No idea. But I guess nobody will really ever know what JFK could have done unless somebody actually put these Secret Service members on the back of their car. Now, could they have known Oswald was there, or did they have their own shooter? Or did they just have their own? Or were both of them hired by the government? As the first shot missed, it clanged off the pavement. If you watch the Zapruder film, you'll see this. It's a very, very quick flash of light, around a minute and a half. It's a couple frames right before he gets shot the first time. The Secret Service member at this point reaches down and grabs something. Nobody really notices this because the film doesn't conclude this, but there's a movie on Netflix that I encourage you guys to watch. It's called JFK and His Secret Story or something like that. I'll make sure to link it down in the bottom. A few witnesses see a Secret Service member reach down by his feet and grab something. And as he sits back up, and this member is in the back seat in the left corner of the car. That's very big if you actually plan this out in your head. As this happens, Oswald shoots again and hits JFK in the shoulder. If you feel your shoulder blade, it hits right there, which is really kind of weird because it ends up coming out of his throat. Very, very weird shot. I can't come up with any other theory on this other than it may have hit him a little bit higher than where it showed. That's the only thing I could think of. And as this shot comes out, it hits him in the hand and then goes through John Connolly's seat because they were a little bit off axis of each other. John Connolly was sitting to his left about 5 or 6 inches, which would put the shot going straight through his ribs, in through his hand, and then into his leg. Now, a major part of this story is this bullet was full. It didn't shatter, it didn't disintegrate at all. It was complete and only had striations from the weapon on it. That's something big that you need to make sure you remember. Now, as the second shot hits JFK, the Secret Service member in the car behind JFK loads his M16. Now, one shot gets fired. He has his M16 in his hand, and it's cocked as the second shot happens. A shot rings out and hits JFK in the head. Now, there is no other shots shot in the plaza. Both cars speed off, and all you can smell is gunpowder at road level. Nobody knows where the third shot came from. But if Oswald shot it within a second of the second shot, number one, how was he that accurate? Number two, why would there be gunpowder smelt on the road level? People smelt this that were on the right of the car, on the left of the car, behind the car, at the corner where Oswald was shooting, but at ground level. If the wind was blowing to the northwest, it wouldn't have blown south, or on the overpass where you hear a cop talk about how he smelt gunpowder and that this was a very, very dirty cover-up. Now, his name's Agent Hickey, the guy who shot him. The big part of this now is an M16 is most likely going to shoot an FMJ, which is a full metal jacket, especially when it's owned by the military or a Secret Service of some kind, because they're going to want to put somebody down. When an FMJ or a hollow point hits a wall or something like that, it's going to disintegrate and turn into shrapnel and try and destroy everything in its path and completely try and control everything that's in front of it. Now, when you look at the brain scans and stuff like that, there's metal fragments everywhere in JFK's head. Everywhere in his skull and in front of him. This really proves that it wasn't shot by the same gun that Lee Harvey Oswald shot, because the bullet in John Connolly's leg was completely full. It didn't shatter, and it hit many, many bones. It just went straight through them. Now, when they got to the hospital, this gun went missing. And Agent Hickey was called in JFK's room to find a minister of some kind to administer JFK his last rites. That happens when you die and you're Christian. It happens. Now, this gun was never found after that. It went back into claims, just like everybody thought. As an eyewitness stated after the police interviewed everybody, that the gun was pointed at JFK. They heard a crack, and then Agent Hickey fell on the back of the car. This obviously shows, number one, he's shot. If he had a gun in his hand, he probably should be guilty regardless. And there was many people that said that there's gunpowder, as I said already. And the wind couldn't have pushed that from Oswald's shot. It just couldn't happen. When the autopsy was done in Washington, D.C., there was an entire room full of people, and it was very distracting to the mortician. And trust me, I'm pretty sure anybody couldn't have been on task in that room. And then something that really baffled me. The president's personal doctor asked if he could have his brain for Robert Kennedy, JFK's brother. Now, I was thinking about this. Why would you want your brother's brain? It makes no sense to me. Now, I can't think of anything that would make that seem right. It makes literally no sense. Then, when the FBI and the CIA were closing their notes and photos that were taken, as they're taken for any kind of high-impact murder or anything like that, they're taken by the head of Secret Service saying, "You'll get these back as soon as we're done with our case." Now, as stated by these Secret Service members, the FBI and CIA members, they never receive these. They never get them back, or the photographers never receive their photos or even their negatives again. And they had empty rolls of film and stuff like that even taken. Now, this is scary. Like, you gotta think of how much cover-up that this really caused and what really came out of it. Later that day, the head of the Secret Service has struck again. He asked the X-ray technician to take more X-rays of the president's head with metal tape to it, to show that he was shot with a bigger bullet than a .556 that would come out of an M16, to show that Lee Harvey Oswald actually shot him in the head. This is baffling. Why would the Secret Service members want to cover this up even more than what it already was? Other than maybe they were a part of it. The possible charges were never even looked at, other than what happened with Oswald. Jack Ruby ended up dying in prison. Many other people wondered what happened, and this is my answer. I'd like to tell you really quick about what people think with the mafia and if they were part of it. And other than that, I can't really think about another thing that may have happened. But I do think all three of these may have been intertwined. But now let's look deeper into the mafia. On the fateful day, we have to not only look at what the CIA and the FBI were doing, but you also have to look at the mafia and the other groups that were huge parties in the United States in the 60s. The mafia in Chicago controlled the city. Now, back in the day, in the 50s, when JFK was running for office, his father, Joe Kennedy, and Bobby and JFK would go and talk to a head of the Chicago Mafia, Sam Giancana, to get him votes to win the presidency and tell his family and everybody in Chicago that they needed to vote for JFK in order to get lower taxes and everything else that everybody would want. This worked. But later, once the Kennedys took office, RFK and JFK attacked organized crime to drive off profit and the safety, trying to arrest anybody in the mafia that they possibly could get their hands on. They arrested quite a few heads of the mafia and created animosity between them. They got them to fight each other, they got them to attack each other, and they got them to commit crimes that were very, very sloppy and were very easily caught. Many people made the assumption that this created hatred between the Mafia family and the Kennedys. This was aided by Jack Ruby, who was a Mafia member who shot Lee Harvey Oswald and killed him. Later it was found out that he was also part of the Chicago Mafia and was running clubs and bars for the Mafia in the Dallas area. Now, the Secret Service or something like that could have hired Sam Giancana, Jack Ruby, somebody like that in the Mafia, to hire somebody to kill the president. And when it didn't fully go through, they had a backup plan with a Secret Service member shooting him and them to cover it up. They obviously were probably going to arrest Lee Harvey Oswald because of him going to Russia and saying that he's a communist and everything else. So he was somebody who said, okay, screw it. Let's do it anyway and see what's going to happen. I don't really agree with this unless it's actually part of something bigger than just them. I don't agree with the lone gunner's theories or that Lee Harvey Oswald shot all 3 bullets. I do believe Lee Harvey Oswald shot a bullet. Then Lee Harvey Oswald shot another bullet and missed the first time, hit the second time. I believe the second time was the shot that hit both people. And then Agent Hickey was the one who shot JFK in the head. But the one thing that really kind of construes this complete theory is if you watch the Zapruder film, JFK's head goes back, not forward. There is nothing that you could shoot anybody in the back of the head with and it would go forward. I do believe Agent Hickey is to blame for a shot. Whether or not it's the second shot and somebody else shot him in the head, no one really knows, and that's, I think, the major problem. There could have been somebody on the overpass. There could have been somebody on the grassy knoll, just like everybody says there was. You never really know. And I guess in the grand scheme of things, I do believe there was somebody on the grassy knoll that shot the last shot that hit him in the head. And I guess nobody will really ever know who that was. I do believe Agent Hickey shot the second shot. It would make sense where it hit him, where it came out. It would be more of a normal shot. As he picked up the gun, he shot him in the shoulder, and it came up, hit him in the throat, because it would be a lower shot instead of Oswald, who missed and then was shooting at an angle down. It wouldn't come out of his throat. It would come out of his belly or stomach. It just wouldn't make sense. So I do believe Lee Harvey Oswald shot the first shot. Agent Hickey shot the second shot. Unknown gunman shot the third shot. And each one of these people should have served time for their crime. They all aided in killing him. And I do believe that if the government never releases any bit of this, hell, they probably should release all of it now, considering nobody that was a part of this or thought of any of this is part of the government now. Unless H.W. Bush was really part of it, and then he's 80 now, so he's probably going to be sitting in jail for the rest of his life if he was convicted. But I guess that's exactly what I believe. So, YouTube followers, I want you to challenge your opinion. Tell me down below. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you think I'm a fucking idiot. And make sure to give me your opinion. And if you really liked the video, make sure you like. And if you like my content, make sure you subscribe. And make sure that if you guys want to see this in schools, or if you guys want me to continue the series, give me a topic that you guys want me to expand on, or tell you a little bit about. Okay? See y'all later.